guys go right in here. You guys go right there. Okay. Okay. Are you okay?
Whoa, you're under something.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're so beautiful. Yeah. Of course, we'd love this. My granddaughters, Katie and come out of the sun a little bit. Yeah. Is that okay? Come. Is that all right? Oh, okay.
Over here, 1, 2,
That's right. Thank you. Ali, aloha. Thank you. Thank you. Aloha. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How's that? Aloha. Thank you. Aloha. Thank you. How you doing? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Cookie Patroy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Cookie Patroy. Aloha. See you. Aloha. Happy New Year. Thank you. Aloha. Thank you. Yeah, look. The dragon right there. Thank you. Aloha. Happy New Year. Oh, look at the little dragon. Thank you. Thank you. How you doing?
Carry her for a little bit.
You want to get carried? How you doing? How you doing? Why, are you getting tired? No, why am I carrying you then? Huh? How's that? Right on! Thank you! How you doing? Thank you. How you doing? Look at the little dragon, huh? Huh? Can we do that? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Aloha. Thank you. Thank you. How's it going, man? Thank you. Aloha. Cookie Patroy. It's Alan. How you doing? Okay, now that you got a taste of it. You gonna come back out here? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Cookie Fatroy. Thank you. Thank you. Aloha. Thank you. Okay. Aloha. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey. Good to see you. Yeah. Beautiful day, huh? Yesterday I was in Washington, D.C. It was 10 degrees. I prefer here. Aloha and Gongi Fat Choi from the 2026 Chinese New Year Parade, Chinatown. Incredible day, incredible afternoon here, so much energy, such a celebration of our culture, of our communities here in Hawaii. Everybody just having a good time. Again, recognizing and celebrating what a special place we have here. Okay, Federal Finances 101. This is these are the basics, and there are a couple of basics that you need to try to get straight up front. And if you get those straight up front, the rest of it may start to flow a little bit easier. So, number one, we in the federal government operate on a federal fiscal year, as does everybody. Some people have a calendar year fiscal year. The state has a different fiscal year than the federal fiscal year, county as well. And so our federal fiscal year starts October 1st, October 1st of each year, we start a new federal fiscal year. We fund the federal government once a year. We don't do a 2-year budget. We do a 1-year budget. And we do the entirety of the federal government once a year. And so each year we have to go through a cycle, which, if it's successful, and it's obviously not been successful, means that we pass our appropriations bills by September 30th for the fiscal year that follows. If we don't pass it, then the federal government starts to shut down because it's not funded, right? So, October 1st, federal fiscal year, 1 year every year. And by the way, that also means that the period from roughly 6 months before September 30th, actually about 9 months, we're in it already, until September 30th is very, very busy getting ready for that federal fiscal year because we've got to fund the entire federal government once a year. We are well into fiscal year 2026 now. We started the current fiscal year on October 1st, 2025. Quick status, we have now, after a lot of jerking around and shutting the federal government down for 43 days a couple of months ago, we have now passed 11 out of our 12 funding bills, and that we also fund in 12 tranches, I suppose I would say, in subject areas, and I'll show you those in a second. So we have to pass 12 fiscal bills by September 30th to start to avoid government shutdowns. And we have now passed 11 out of our 12 fiscal year 2026 funding bills. So they are funded. Those parts of the federal government, that money is coming in, and it should start to, you should start to be able to access that. The only one we haven't funded is the Homeland Security funding bill because we are in a major disagreement over reforms for immigration and customs enforcement right now. ICE and Customs and Border Protection are part of the Department of Homeland Security, which also includes other agencies that are critical to us here in Hawaii. For example, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which has paid billions for the Maui wildfires and is involved in other disasters in our state. the U.S. Coast Guard, and there are other agencies. So these agencies are impacted right now because they are technically shut down. These TSA agents at the airports are working without pay right now because we're shut down trying to solve ICE. But the rest of them have passed. So we're not going to face a shutdown on the rest of them, barring some really weird thing that happens, which does happen in Washington nowadays, until September 30th of this year. We're already working on fiscal year 2027. We've been working on it in my office for about 4 months now because we start about almost a good year out for the next fiscal year. And so we're working on that, and we will work through this two-stage process, which I will. Okay, so that's point number one. Every year, fiscal year, funded every single year. Point number two, our federal budget is not any different in concept from a home budget, a business budget, a state budget, or a county budget. It's not some magical creature that exists under its own rules. You still have revenues coming in, those are taxes and fees, et cetera, and you still have expenses going out. Here's the biggest difference, the federal budget from the state and county budgets. And it ain't necessarily a good difference, but it's the biggest difference. And that is that we can borrow money to cover deficits. Deficits being where we don't collect the revenues to sufficiently offset the expenses coming in. That's deficit spending, which we will get into. In the state, you can't do that. You've got to go through a process of a balance, so-called balancing your budget, same thing at the county level. So that is a safeguard that, frankly, in my view, has served the state and counties well, and it's getting away from us. So point number two, the budget is no different. It's not a different creature, except for the ability to borrow. Point number three, we distinguish in our federal spending between mandatory and discretionary spending. Mandatory spending is spending that's going to happen pretty much outside the normal appropriations process because it's set into law how it's going to be spent, how it's going to be raised, how it's going to be spent. The entitlement programs are mandatory spending. So Social Security. We don't appropriate to Social Security every year. The money comes in, the money goes out. It's not quite that simple. Medicare, veterans benefits. This is mandatory spending, and this is actually the larger share of our federal budget. This is mandatory spending in a FY 2024, $4.4 trillion. That came in, that went out. This is where we are focused, discretionary spending. This is most of what our federal government is doing that affects each and all of you in your capacities in state and county government or nonprofits, because this is the money that the federal government, we appropriate once a year. So once a year, we are dealing with the discretionary part of federal spending. I don't want to discount this. There's lots of issues up here, but that's not for us to really get into in detail today unless you'd like to. So point number three, point number one, we do it once a year. Point number two, it's not different from a federal from anybody's budget except for borrowing. And point number three, distinguish mandatory from discretionary, okay? This is a good example of total federal spending in this case, FY 2025. And you will see here, mandatory spending is about 62% of total federal spending of $7.4 trillion. And mandatory spending is made up of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other. And these will come in unless we change the law, which we just did with Medicaid, and I'll talk about that. This is what we're concerned about right here, this slice. Discretionary spending of about 1.7 trillion, divided defense, non-defense. This is really of great concern to us at the federal budget. Of total federal spending in FY 2025, interest that we're paying on our borrowings is 13% of the total. And it's far more than that as a percentage of total discretionary, right? So we don't really do a whole bunch over here, except on occasion we do change the law, which we just did last year, affecting Medicaid. But this is where I spend my time and where it particularly impacts our federal government. Okay, this is a busy slide, but what this shows you is what's happening with our federal finances on the discretionary side. So forget the mandatory for a second. This is as of December 2025, so we're in fiscal year 2026, and I'm just going to kind of summarize this. We had collected $1.2 trillion in revenue thus far in those 3 months, and we had spent $1.8 trillion. So we are spending in the deficit, and we have been for a long, long time. It's not a surprise. In FY 2025, we spent $1.78 trillion more than we collected, and we borrowed that money. How do we borrow it? We borrow it by issuing government bonds, right? People around the world invest in our securities, in our federal government. Why? Because they think we're the safest investment out there. The federal government has never defaulted on our national debt. And so it's not like other countries that are unstable, politically, socially, economically. People around the world, including other countries, invest in our federal government, lend us money because they think they're going to get it back with interest, and there's not going to be a default on that debt. And so it's really important for us not to default on our debt. But the fact of the matter is, people will loan us this money so far. One day they might decide it's not as safe an investment as it used to be, in which case we're in deep kimchi because we're borrowing the money to make up the difference between revenue and expenses. And we've reached a really dangerous point of national debt, because every year that we have deficit spending, we build up national debt. So $1 trillion, or actually $2 trillion more accurately the last couple of years, $2 trillion deficit, and the previous year $2 trillion, and the previous year $1 trillion, and the previous year $2 trillion, and the previous year $2 trillion. That's $10 trillion of debt. And that's what this is right here. We now have national debt, what our government owes to people that have loaned us money, of $38 trillion. This was somewhere around $28 trillion only about 4-6 years ago. A lot of that was COVID, but a lot of that was because we borrowed our way out of COVID. We had billions of dollars in COVID borrowings, $4 or $5 trillion in a very short period of time. Now, we benefited from that here in Hawaii, but we drove up our national debt. And this is an indication of what I said about interest. Right over here, we have a long-term view from 1976 as a percentage of GDP. So we measure these things like interest and deficits and debt as a percentage of our overall economy, so gross domestic product. And why do we do that? Because a number in itself doesn't really tell you much, but a number as related to the ability of the economy to sustain it, just like a household budget. I mean, if you're making $1 million a year, which nobody is for the most part, then you can afford more debt, right, than if you're making $100,000 or $50,000 a year. And similarly, so we measured it as a percentage of GDP over on this side, and this is time. And here what we see is that our mandatory spending as a percent of GDP is increasing. These are projections by our Congressional Budget Office. Interest is increasing and discretionary spending is decreasing. Why is discretionary spending decreasing in these projections? Because mandatory spending is increasing, because we're borrowing too much money, and thus we don't have as much money to distribute around. It's being crowded out, as we say. And this just makes the point again that debt is rising as a percent of GDP. And this is where we're going if we don't start to fix this. interest and debt is going to start to really affect our federal government. This is one of the biggest problems we have in our federal government, which nobody wants to talk about, but we have to talk about it at some point. Okay, so that's very, very fast federal government 101. The bottom line, we appropriate every year. We focus on discretionary spending, about $1.7 trillion a year at present, but we are borrowing a lot of money because we are not collecting as much in taxes as we're spending in revenues, and that's going to catch up with all of us over time, so we have to be cautious. That kind of sums up that first part. Let's talk about now the congressional appropriations process. What do we actually do every year? Another key point to lay out here from the beginning. We distinguish between what we call authorizing and appropriating. Authorizing means we passed a law saying that money could be spent, and this was how it's supposed to be spent. But that does not itself spend the money. What spends the money is appropriations. So, for example, you will hear from time to time about the National Defense Authorization Act, which is our annual authorizing legislation for our military. And it'll say, well, the NDAA was just passed, and we're going to spend $1 trillion on national defense under the NDAA. No, that's not what we're going to do. The NDAA said we could spend $1 trillion, but the Appropriations Committee actually spends that. Why? Because there's got to be some central body, like Ways and Means, like Finance, that coordinates everything and spends everything through a funnel so that it's all coordinated. Otherwise, you just end up with kind of a crazy spending atmosphere. And so you also have to say to yourself, when you think about this, people get this confused quite a bit. Somebody will say, well, the NDAA says we've got this much money. Well, is it appropriated or not? Or Native Hawaiian education, it says we can spend this much money. No, was it appropriated or not? Farm bill, how much money for agriculture? No, was it appropriated? That's the key question. And so that's what this says. Authorizing is writing the law, appropriations legislation is actually cutting the check. And again, who does that? The Appropriations Committee. We've been around since the early part of our country, back to 1789. And as I've already pointed out, it's got the broadest jurisdiction of any committee. We have 12 subcommittees, and each of them takes a slice of the federal government. So appropriations is where we fund. And these are the 12 subcommittees. And you can see it for yourself. One subcommittee is devoted to agriculture. One has Commerce, Justice, Science. Think the U.S. Department of Justice. Think all of our science-related investment here. University of Hawaii gets a lot of that. Here's defense, a big one. Energy and water, this is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Financial services has a number of kind of independent agencies. Homeland Security, we talked about that. Interior and the environment, basically natural resource protection and our national parks. This is a huge one right here that we rely upon tremendously in our state government, which is labor, health, human services, and education. So this is a big one right here. Legislative branch funds Congress. Military construction is all of our, what it sounds like, military construction and veterans. This is a big one for our Hawaii. State and foreign operations is all of our overseas activities, all of our foreign aid, and then transportation, housing, and urban development. We use this quite a bit. And you can see over here, I just compared FY 2024 to the bills that we just passed, FY 2026. Fairly level funding, defense is going up, but you can also see the ratios here, which I think is on the next slide. Yeah. This will show you where the money is actually going. Again, remember, federal discretionary spending, so not mandatory, discretionary, 1.7 trillion each fiscal year. And here we have defense, 50%. It's obviously a huge amount, $840 billion in the current fiscal year. Next biggest, labor, labor, health, human services, and education. Very big one for us here in Hawaii again. Milcon VA, we benefit here. We have a lot of military construction coming into Hawaii right now. We've got the largest single military construction project in the entire country here right now, Pearl Harbor Dry Dock number 5. We also have other major construction, which is boosting up our construction industry right now here in Hawaii. Homeland down here, we talked about. And then, you can also make the observation, and it's true at the state government level as well, that some departments just kind of don't get a whole bunch. Interior, the environment, 2%, foreign operations, 3%. We use this quite a bit for our transportation. We get a lot of money for transportation here. So that's how we divide it up. This is a very busy chart that's designed to show you kind of the ideal appropriation cycle every year. It's supposed to start when the president gives us his budget. The president's budget is not binding on Congress. The president's budget is what the president wants. The president doesn't get to say how the federal government spends its money, although he's busy trying to do that and he's being sued for it. Congress appropriates the money. And as long as the president signs our appropriations law, that's the law of the land. But he still gives us a budget because we want to know what the administration thinks. He's supposed to do that in February. He's late. We're supposed to go through a budget process that provides the parameters of how we spend the money. And then we go through the actual drafting of the appropriations bills by the subcommittees, the 12 subcommittees. And then we're supposed to pass those, and then we put them together in a conference and pass them, and then we send it to the White House and he passes. That's what it's supposed to look like, and it's supposed to be February through September, right? February is when the president is supposed to give us his budget, and September is the end of the prior fiscal year. So we have to have passed the law in order for the federal government to remain funded. This is more like what's been happening lately. The first thing is that we have not been following a formal budget process for some years now. The president is expected to give us his budget request by early March. He's late. We go straight into appropriations. I'll talk about this. This is the deadline for appropriations requests to my office. Now, we in my office, we've already been working since October, November last year to not only finish the fiscal year that we're in now, but to start on FY 2027. That's how far in advance we have to start to have a good appropriation cycle, to stay coordinated with all of you. I have to submit my own requests. Even though I'm on the committee, I still submit my requests, and then I try to obviously get them done. And I submit hundreds of requests every year. I do submit requests in each of those 12 channels. Those are requests that come from you and from my own outreach to the community and my own judgments about what we should be putting our money into. April, May, we started into a 6-month process in appropriations, and my time in that 6-month period is almost exclusively appropriations. I probably spend about 50% of my total time in DC every year, and maybe back here on appropriations in one way or the other. But once the season gets going, it gets really, really busy. We pass the bills, and we hopefully pass them. That's what the time frame is that we're trying to follow right now. What does this all mean for Hawaii? So we talked about Federal Funding 101. We talked about our House appropriations process. And now let's talk about what the stakes are for Hawaii. First of all, this is just from usaspending.gov. It's an estimate of how much federal funding we get per year, total, coming in for all purposes. So money that's going to the state government, money that's going to the county governments, money that's going to nonprofits, money that's going to Social Security recipients, money that's going to federal, Department of Defense payroll in Hawaii. We have 24,000 active duty service members here, not to include our guardsmen, who are getting money. So how much, that's just all the money coming in from the feds. $23 billion, which is obviously a lot of money. And it's a very, very significant part of our overall state gross domestic product. So how much money is it contributing to us here in Hawaii? Defense funding is a huge portion of that. 21% of the total federal funding coming into Hawaii is defense related. It is defense related because of the military's activities here, the military's programs here, the military's funding of programs at the University of Hawaii and elsewhere, the military's assistance to the state, the military's payroll, housing, et cetera, et cetera. 21% of all federal money is military. And that's why we say here that our defense industry, or defense effort, I should say, is our second largest economic driver outside of tourism. First largest during COVID, by the way. Non-defense spending is about $18 billion, but that includes Social Security, Medicare, and veterans. Remember, that's mandatory spending. So it's going to come in regardless of appropriations. This totals about $11.2 billion. And so what that means is that we've got about 6 or 7 billion of non-defense discretionary coming into Hawaii every year. But here's the bad news. It's going to decline, or at least on its current trajectory, it's going to decline. And now we're talking about, I'm switching a little bit from total federal money coming into Hawaii. Now I'm switching to total, just for the sake of the illustration, how much is the state of Hawaii, the state of Hawaii government getting from our federal government every year? What I'm showing here is relatively true as well from a political perspective, what is going on with this administration and majority in Congress and how they view federal funding overall. It's going to be true also for the counties, that they're dealing with the same issue. And this is what Governor Green has been talking about, what the legislature has been dealing with, which is a reduction in overall federal funding. And right here, this looks pretty steep, and it is pretty steep. Now, this was FY 2025. Federal funding of about it's right here, 4.5 billion. Sorry, got to get my zeros straight sometimes. 4.5 billion, which is a huge portion. This was 18% of total state money. This was inflated because we were still coming out of COVID. We were in the Lahaina wildfires. We were getting billions of dollars in extra federal assistance. So this is a little deceptive because this was unusual. If you go back over here to previous years, it would have gone maybe like that or something like that. But this is what's happening now. And we are estimating FY 2026, the current fiscal year, at about $3 billion. Going down in FY 2027 a little bit more to where it's starting to be in the 9, 10, 11% range. Whoops. Why is that happening? It's happening for two basic reasons. The first reason it's happening is because this president and this administration do not want to spend as much federal money in the non-defense space as a matter of their political beliefs. They want to compress the federal government in the non-defense space. They want to compress federal government activity and spending in education, for example. They want to compress and even eliminate federal social safety net programs in health and in human services and in housing, for that matter. I fundamentally disagree with this approach. I have no problem with eliminating, waste and abuse and fraud, and I have no problem in eliminating programs that aren't really working or that should be administered at the state level rather than the federal level. But we have generations now of fundamental federal support across the entire nation for key social safety net programs such as Medicaid, such as supplemental nutrition assistance, such as natural resources. The federal government wants to reduce these areas: science-related research, environmental-related research. Most of the non-discretionary part of our federal government is under some compression. But there are two things that are really driving this number. So that's an overall, we are obviously trying to make sure that this doesn't happen from a responsible public policy stewardship of our money's perspective. It also is very important to many of the key programs in the state and county governments and the nonprofits who are similarly being compressed right now as a result. But there are two things that are driving this more than anything else, and that those both arise from the reconciliation budget bill of last summer, sometimes referred to as the, quote, one big beautiful bill, or one big ugly bill, depending on your perspective. A huge bill that I voted against that did a number of things. It's a 1,000-page bill. Obviously, there's things in there that I could support. But on balance, what it did was to increase expenses while reducing revenues, thus driving up national debt, which I didn't agree with. Continuing tax cuts for people that didn't need it, which I didn't agree with. And also, more to the point, really going after Medicaid and supplemental nutrition assistance. Medicaid is our social safety net healthcare program, which benefits somewhere around 461,000 of our fellow citizens. So think about 1/3 of this state relies for their healthcare on this federal government program. And under this bill, that is compressed and reduced over a 10-year window significantly with less assistance to the states. This is a matching program, right? And so the feds are basically saying under this bill, we're going to spend less on Medicaid. Thus, our decision here in Hawaii, what are we going to do about that? Similarly, supplemental nutrition assistance, which is our school lunch programs and how we take care of our seniors and those that need extra food just to survive sometimes. About 161,000 of us rely on SNAP in one way, shape, or form. And these two programs are being contracted. And unless the law changes, that's what's going to happen by hundreds of millions of dollars. So this figure is a realistic estimate under the current law of what is going to happen in the big picture. So that's the bad news that we all have to deal with. I think it should be bad news to most of us because, as I said, hundreds of thousands of our fellow citizens rely on this for their basic health care and food assistance. Now, that's the bad news. Now, what do we do about it? What we do about it is we maximize the appropriations process every year to target federal assistance to where we need it the most and to maintain these programs, legitimate programs, as much as we possibly can. And so that's the next part of this. And that's where we come in, our partnership, because my job as your member of Congress in general, and especially as a member of the House Appropriations Committee, and my counterpart is Senator Schatz, who's a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee. So we tag team all the time and coordinate very closely with Senator Hirono and Representative Takuda on our appropriations requests. So we're kind of all, for the most part, aligned. We're a small delegation in a big pond, and we got to hang together, and we have to be aligned, and that's what we do every year. But again, Schatz and me are inappropriate, and so we're kind of in this fight every year trying to do that. And so this is about how you can help me with my job, submitting appropriation requests. So I need to hear from you. What do you need? How do we go about trying to get it? I have to take care of DC. You know what's happening here in Hawaii. You're on the line. You're on the front lines here. You know what the money is you need. You know what the needs are that needs to be satisfied. I know how we might be able to translate it into action by the federal government, especially in appropriations. So here are some basics on how I go about this and how you can think about it. There are a number of ways of thinking about appropriations every year. And requests, so these are requests from me to my own appropriations committee that I then go try to fight for in appropriations. Again, you can see the results of that. We actually had a very, very good FY 2026. So I'm really happy about where we ended up in 2026. Took a lot of work from a lot of people, including you. I bunched them into three categories. We call these programmatic, language, and CPF, community project funding. I'll go through each of these. Programmatic is what you would think. What is the particular federal program that we need here in Hawaii, and how do we fund money to that program so that we receive that money in that program? And here we just have an example of a program up here. Here's a bunch of programs. This is in Economic Development Assistance. I think that's the Department of Commerce, if I recall correctly. STEM Apprentice Program. I know that program is a program that we use right here in Hawaii. I work with the people that administer that program, so I try to fund that program every year because I know it's going to find its way to Hawaii. Also do some very targeted programmatic funding. Native Hawaiian Healthcare Program. This is actually from the appropriations bill, and this says in a particular program, no less than $27 million shall go to Native Hawaiian healthcare, of which not less than $10 million shall be provided to Papa'olalokahi. Papa'olalokahi is our Native Hawaiian health community health effort that many Native Hawaiians rely upon. So I try to fund to that program because I know it's going to find its way to where the money is. So you can be thinking to yourself, well, where am I getting this money from? What is the program? And by the way, I should have said up front that most of this money goes to a government agency, and then it finds its way into the community. So most of the money goes to the state of Hawaii, which then allocates it out, or the city and county of Honolulu, or the University of Hawaii, or a fair amount of money goes directly to the nonprofit community through the federal government. I'll get into that briefly. I'm really taking a long time. Sorry about this. Language requests. Language is a direction from appropriations to do something. It's not the actual spending, but it's a direction. Like, when you're spending this money, you shall do this. You shall allocate a certain amount of this here. Or you shall spend this money in this way. And I use this to direct funding once it leaves Congress so that I know it's getting to the intended destination. Sometimes the money leaves Congress and it goes off in another channel. And I don't want that to happen. I want it to get to where I intended the money to get to. So I use language. And so we can work with you on that. And then finally, community project funding. This used to be called earmarks. Earmarks were abused. We're talking about back in the old days. And earmarks got out of control. We wiped out earmarks for 10 years, and then we brought them back about 6 years ago under very constrained circumstances. It has to be for a specific project. I have to personally vouch for the project. I have to sign a letter to appropriations saying, I checked this out, it's cool, it's good, I want the money. It's my request. Nobody else's, and it's a straight shot. And so each member of Congress has a certain number of CPFs, we call them, community project funding requests. And this can make a real difference to a particular organization. For example, I just visited the Blood Bank of Hawaii, the new one out in Kapolei, beautiful new facility. I did a CPF to try to get them over the hump in terms of that building about 5 years ago. $2 million, and so that money was used for that purpose. Sometimes they require matching funds, very strict, but it can make a difference. I've done it for the fire department. Here are 5 of my 15 CPFs that I got approved. I put in 15 requests in FY 2026. 14 are already approved. 1 is approved subject to the Homeland Security bill passing. These are just examples. I helped Papakolea because they have to get their sewer system up to code. They need a little bit of extra money to complete their study. Waikiki Vista is a city and county of Honolulu project to convert a building, the old Tokai University, if you remember that, into affordable housing. Highlands Intermediate, they needed a school media center. Mauna Loa Fish Pond out in East Honolulu, try to help them through DLNR with their fish pond habitat. And then finally, Police Department, they needed some extra money to get a new mobile command vehicle. So these are 5 of 15, so that's an opportunity. Okay, submitting appropriations requests. This is your job in conjunction with us. Please identify the federal department, agency, and program that, if you can, that matches your need. Take a look at the prior year appropriations. We can help you with all of this. It's also all on my website. What kind of request is it? Is it programmatic? Are we trying to just fund money to a particular program? Are we trying to direct the money through report language? Is it appropriate for a community project funding? How much? Summary? And then I have an online form to submit your requests. Remember that each of us in the congressional delegation is our own appropriation center, so we don't have a common center. So you actually should submit to all of the offices if you're going to do this. Okay, and we can help you with all of that. I want to very briefly cover one other aspect here. We're not going to have enough time to do this. But obviously all of this money, if it's all appropriated, then it's out in the federal government somewhere. And the conduit of that money to people in the community, aside from just what the feds send to the state of Hawaii for education or for human services, or aside from what it sends for natural resource protection, these are programs that the federal government sets up for grants to the community, so to nonprofits, for example. And so there's a whole nother conversation to be had here about how do you go out and get federal grant funding for your organization. By the way, it doesn't have to be a nonprofit. State and county governments go out and get grants all the time. And so we've developed, and this is online, a federal grant resource guide. It's on my website. And it is intended to help you to identify and pursue federal grant opportunities with our help. So let's recap where we've been over the last way more than 15 minutes. We talked about overview of federal finances. We talked about every fiscal year. We talked about mandatory versus discretionary. We talked about this is no different than a family or a business or a state or county government budget, with one exception, which is we can borrow money, and we're busy borrowing a lot of money. That's a problem for all of us. Interest on the national debt, by the way, is larger as an expenditure now than how much we spend on defense every year. So think about that. If you had a family budget, and some people do, where interest was your largest expense, that would be a very difficult situation to be in. We talked about the congressional appropriations process, basically starting the prior year leading up to September 30th of a fiscal year is heavy duty into a probe, so starting in really the early part of the year, January, February. And then my work gets really intense, say February to September. We talked about how that's going to look in the current fiscal year appropriations cycle. I have a deadline for when I want to get my requests from you. What does this all mean for Hawaii? Where does the money go? How does it come to Hawaii? What are our own challenges here in Hawaii with federal government funding, and what do we do about it? We talked about how one thing we can do is to put in very, very good, high quality, targeted requests for appropriations through my office. We talked about the procedure. And then again, how to get further information. All of this is at case.house.gov. There's a specific appropriations page at case.house.gov for you to go to for further information.
I'll take a look, and if you guys want.
Wait a minute. I'm going to interview you right now. Okay.
Oh no.
This is for Olelo. It's no big
Okay.
deal. Okay.
And it'll
So
be
I'm in a quite special place, and we are here to find out what's here. Can you tell us who you are and what we're doing here?
Sure, yeah. I'm Tisha Aragaki. I'm the reference archivist for Ulu Ulu. This is the moving image archive for the state of Hawaii. We collect and we preserve and store all of the whatever we can get of the moving image heritage of Hawaii. So that means television stations, independent filmmakers, even home movies, and congressional collections.
What's your oldest thing in the moving image?
Oldest thing, I think probably that would be something from the Bishop Museum collection. So I think we do have things that go back to the 1920s or so. Yeah.
And this is the Henry Juni, right? Archives, is that what it's called? Ulu Ulu?
Yes, Henry Ku'ualoha
Right.
Juni Moving Image Archive.
Right.
It was originally named after one of our co-founders' fathers, who was the sergeant at arms for the Senate when Danny Noe was there.
He was a longtime friend of Danny Noe
Yes.
and came up through the ranks with Senator Inoue back in the old days and worked in Washington for many, many decades. And as you said, was a sergeant at arms of the U.S. Senate, and his daughter actually co-founded this in his honor, right?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, we have a nice little exhibit outside. Hopefully, you guys get a chance to take a look at it. We put some of the memorabilia that he brought back from D.C. and a little bit of his story while he was there.
So you have the congressional, you have congressional moving image archives also, right? Segregated.
Yes.
So this is the University of Hawaii Congressional Papers collection that basically the moving images from that collection have come over here.
Yes. So, well, actually, the papers are still at the
Yeah.
University of Manoa, and then we took all of the audiovisual because a lot of times what happens in archives is people that take care of mainly manuscripts, they don't know what to do with the audiovisual because they don't have the equipment to take care of it. And so having a place like us that can actually take that in, take care of it, really, really helps. So a lot of those tapes and films have been kind of sitting on the shelves waiting to be digitized so people can hear the messages on them.
Right. But actually, I've looked online. So some of your stuff is already online. So you can see some of the old campaign stuff for Senator Inoue, Senator Matsunaga. I actually looked at, I worked for Senator Matsunaga. That's how I got my start. And I looked online for Ulu Ulu, and you can actually see them online already. And so I looked back at some of the old stuff. I wasn't in those moving images, luckily.
Oh, well, we have you in the news for sure, though. So I've definitely
I have a personal interest in this because I have given and am giving all of my congressional papers to the University of Hawaii Congressional Papers collection, and I've been doing that for a while. And so I have been doing this Olelo show. That's what we're doing right now. We're doing a show that we put on community television. I've been doing this back to 2003, so I've done it throughout my time in Congress, and I gave my 2003 to 2007 already. They're already over here, so I crashed your party to find out what's happening with my my shows.
Okay, yeah, well, they're on our shelves, and so they are in our lovely vault over here, which is temperature and humidity controlled. It has a separate fire suppression system from the rest of the library, and we're just waiting to kind of work through everything. We have about 80,000 reels in here and 100 collections.
Yeah, take care of them, because I want my children, my grandchildren, and maybe my great-grandchildren to know that I actually did think about things, and they can see what I did. I actually did something.
Absolutely. No, that's the full intention is we want to make sure that everything's in the right condition until we get a chance to digitize.
All right, I'm getting dragged away, but thanks for letting us crash in here, and thanks for taking good care of our history.
Thank you for coming.
Mahalo.
Take care.
I'm testifying today in strong support of congressional oversight to protect veterans' benefits and in support of House Resolution 6358, the Veteran Education Empowerment Act. As a senior enlisted combat leader, I know intimately the cost of war. Because of that experience, I believe it's more important than ever that our nation honors its promises to those who serve and sacrifice.
Testifying before Congress, before the state legislature is very, very important for us to do our jobs. It's our opportunity to listen and to ask questions. It's your opportunity to convey, and you can't do that in a piece of paper. And so this is, for me, I try to make it far less of a formal process where it's just so strict and everybody's just kind of saying, reading off a piece of paper, and I'm not interacting. I try to find something out. I try to find something out from each piece of testimony.
This is my first testimony, and I would like to bring up the major issue about ICE's occupation in Hawaii. Why are we letting people get dragged away from their homes, families, and friends by a bunch of terrorists? Because that's what they essentially are. They're terrorists.
I would just agree with everything that Rep. Takuda said. The activities of ICE in this country are absolutely unacceptable, absolutely against our values, against our democracy, and ICE has to be reformed.
Congressman Chase and Congressman Takuda, thank you for the opportunity to testify. You'll have my written testimony. I'm summarize. My name is Raymond Borrego, and I'm a medically retired veteran with 15 years time in service, and I'm one of the 54,000 veterans directly affected by Congress's repeated failure to pass the Major Richard Starr Act.
We just echo what Rep. Takuda is saying. Deeply appreciate your service, your wife's service, Mr. Gomez's service. We have somewhere around 115,000 veterans here in Hawaii, give or take.
Yes, sir.
Same challenges as the rest of the country, but some very unique challenges here too in veterans benefits, in veterans health care, education in some cases. And so we always have to try to work together here in Hawaii to understand the different forms that challenges to our veterans assistance manifest themselves. And that's something that's very important to both of us. We need to hear where those things happen. I did a talk at a Veterans Town Hall back in November, which is online actually, and I'd love to ask you to just take a look at it and see what we missed.
In the 2019 to 2020 academic year, 72% of undergraduates received some form of financial aid, 55% received federal aid, and 40% received a Pell Grant. Yet despite the support, the average net price for public four-year colleges in 2021 to 2022 was approximately $15,200, while the average Pell Grant award was only about $4,500.
In our most recently completed appropriations cycle, actually did boost the Pell Grant above where the administration was. So we're trying to get there. That was fairly nonpartisan, as a matter of fact. Your comment on regional price parity, I just want to recognize that because that is a constant problem for us here in Hawaii is to get our cost of living and equalized with the continent for the most part. We have this in our student loan programs. We have it in Medicare reimbursements. We have it in how much we pay our federal civilian workers. We cannot get this right, and this is something we all have to really work on.